My name is Sarah Stone, and I've had the privilege of being married to the optimistic quadriplegic for 31 years. I wanted to share my experiences of when Keith had his accident and some of the things that I had to go through while Keith was 4 hours away in a hospital in Petoskey, Michigan. It was a Sunday night, and I had gone back to school. I was an elementary principal, and I'd been back to school for a few weeks, and as you can guess, the stress was already building up when I got back to work. And I wasn't feeling 100% that night, so I was going to bed a little bit early. And it was almost as soon as I stood up to head into the bedroom, my phone rang. And it was a number I didn't really recognize, but something told me I should answer the phone. So I answered the phone, and it was Keith's good friend, Bob Chapman, who said, "Sarah, this is Bob." And I kind of was like, "Hi, Bob, is everything okay?" And he replied very short responses, "No." "Is this about Keith?" "Yes." "Okay, can you tell me what happened?" And he told me that he didn't have all the details, but what he had heard was that Keith was taking the golf cart with his partner Gil. They were in the golf cart, and they were taking it out to the cars to drop off their golf clubs to the car. Then they were going to head into the bar for some dinner. And as Keith turned, he must have been looking a different way or something. He'd hit the curb heading out to the parking lot, and he had fell out of the golf cart, and as best they could tell, the golf cart had fallen on top of him. And he said at this time, Keith's telling the emergency room doctor that he can't feel his arms or his legs. So he asked what I wanted them to do, and I told him to just take care of Keith and that I would be on my way as soon as possible. He also mentioned that the emergency room doctor would be calling me to tell me what they'd found out after Keith got his results from the MRI. Within 10 minutes, I had grabbed my keys, done everything I needed to do, and was running down the stairs to my car to head to Petoskey. I really didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do when I got there. I have sisters who are in the medical field, so I called my sister Carmela, who's an adult nurse, and asked her what are some questions I should ask the doctor when he calls me, because I have no idea how to get the information out of him. I'm not sure what he's going to tell me. So she gave me some good questions to ask him, and I promised her I would call her when I got up to Petoskey and knew more of Keith's situation. In the meantime, I was trying to brainstorm who did I know that could be up north and could be close enough to get to Keith before I get there. I tried our good friends Kathy and Kevin Cronkite, who I know have a place up north. They were a good 2 hours away from Petoskey. Then I tried my good friend Tia Dale, who was an elementary principal with me, and she also was a couple hours away. But all of them offered to drive to Petoskey and could get there in 2 hours, where I was about 4 hours away. I decided to just have them stay put and told them I'd let them know when I heard more. As soon as I hung up from Tia, my other sister Gloria had called me, and she did not want me to make the drive to Petoskey all by myself, so her husband was going to drive her to Cadillac, and we would both get off at the Cadillac exit, turn right and go to the very first driveway, whatever it was, on the right, and I would meet her there and I would pick her up. While I was driving to meet Gloria, I did get a call from Dr. Colin, who wasn't the emergency room doctor, but he was the neurosurgeon on call. And my first kudos out to Dr. Colin. He was very honest and upfront about everything dealing with Keith, but did it in such a kind and gentle manner that you knew things were serious, but yet you knew that maybe there was a little bit of hope. He explained to me how serious Keith's injuries were. He knew that Keith had been up north with 16 of his buddies, and so he kept reassuring me that Keith did nothing wrong. This is why there's things called an accident. Didn't help the situation, but that he really felt that he'd gotten information out of Keith and his friends to know that it was truly an accident. He told me that Keith had C4 and C5, they were fractured vertebrae, and that he also had a 360 compression on C3. And he felt that if he didn't get in and do the surgery right away, that the longer Keith was out before he went into surgery, the longer his rehab might be, or he may not even survive. He was very honest and told me the chances of Keith not surviving surgery were very high, and that also if Keith did survive surgery, he did not know if he was ever going to be able to breathe on his own. And he told me that Keith made him promise that he would not let him live on a ventilator. And he said, I'm honoring that promise to your husband. Do you understand that? And I said, yes. And then he said, well, why don't you talk to Keith for a minute? So then Keith got on the phone, and first thing he said was how sorry he was. And then we talked about how he was feeling, and he was very calm, very, very reassuring to me. Told me that I was going to be taken care of, and not to worry about that at all, to drive safe. He wouldn't be able to see me before surgery, but he would see me right after surgery. And I could tell that he was very, his speech was kind of airy, that he was really struggling to get some deep breaths. Dr. Colin got back on the phone, told me that he would have the nurse call me when they started the surgery, but he thought they would easily be in surgery by midnight, and I wasn't projected to get there till after 1 o'clock. He promised that he would have someone keep me in constant contact and updated about the surgery. I just asked him to please do what he could to keep my Keith alive, and he promised he would. Little did I know that Keith had made him promise he would be a Superman, and that's what we call Dr. Colin, our Superman. In the meantime, after talking to Dr. Colin, I met my sister Gloria in Cadillac, and then we headed up the way to Petoskey. When we got to Northern McLaren Hospital in Petoskey, 4 of Keith's friends met us right outside the door, and the look on their faces was just pure despair. They were very teary-eyed, very apologetic, just tried to tell me some uplifting information, any other information they had. And then we went into the waiting room, the surgical waiting room. I did forget to mention on the way up as well, a really nice nurse named Peg, who I've never met. Or I guess I met her, but I don't remember her very well. She called me and said, you know what, you've got the best surgeon you could ever have. If I ever wanted someone in my family needed this kind of surgery, Dr. Colin's who I would have called. I'm taking good care of your husband. Since you can't be here right now, I will stand in your place. And boy, did that make a difference. That just kind of lifted a big heavy weight on my heart. Although I wanted to be there, and this was somebody I didn't know, but that someone was understanding the importance of Keith just meant the world to me. Getting back to when we got to the hospital, we went in. I had also called my son Andy and his fiance Allison at the time, and told them that they might want to come up, that I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but here's what Dr. Colin had laid out. I did ask Dr. Colin when I spoke to him on the phone, one question was, I have 2 boys that are out of town, and I have in-laws that live in Florida, and I wasn't sure what to tell them. And his response was, you need to tell them to get here as soon as possible if they want to see their son or their dad alive. So I did. I called my oldest son and his fiance, and they were in Novi, and they headed right up to Petoskey. And his name's Andrew, and her name's Allison. And Andrew did me a huge favor and got a hold of my younger son, Matthew, who was doing an internship at Microsoft in Seattle, Washington, and explained what was going on and that he needed to get home as soon as possible. I did have the job of calling my in-laws, and it was about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and I got a hold of them, told them what was happening, encouraged them to take a flight up here so that they could get to Keith or see Keith, because I really didn't know. I knew he was on a ventilator now, and I really didn't know when or if he'd ever come off that, and I really wanted to make sure that my in-laws got to see their son at least one more time. And my father-in-law said that they felt it was best if they drive up because they knew they'd have to need their van. So he said first thing in the morning, like 5:30, they were going to get up and they were going to start heading up here. Gloria, Andy, and Allison, we waited in the surgical waiting room. And the surgery started a little after midnight, and I think we got there about 1:30. By about 3:30, 4 o'clock, it was time for God and I to have a chat because I was pretty ticked off at him right then. So I left the surgical waiting room and asked someone if they could tell me where the chapel was, and we went down to, I went to the chapel, and to be honest, I let God have it. I looked around, made sure no one was in there with me, and then I let him have it. I have done everything he's asked of me my whole life. My husband has done everything he's asked of him his whole life. And why did this have to happen? Lots of why us, and lots of tears and not very nice words. And then as I got ready to leave, I felt a huge weight lifted off my chest because I just said, God, it's in your hands. I don't know if you're going to make me happy, but it's in your hands, and I will trust that you know what's best. Went back to the surgical waiting room, and I hadn't seen a doctor for a while, or a nurse or anyone for a while, and we noticed the waiting room was starting to fill up a little bit. About 6 o'clock, a doctor comes in, obviously in his scrubs, and his head's covered and everything, and he had dimples, and he was just really cute, and I thought, that can't be Dr. Colin. I don't know what a Dr. Colin looks like. I hadn't seen a picture of him. But he came in and he looked at me and he smiled and he said, Stone family? And I said, yep. And I thought, he's smiling. He's smiling. So I went into the consultation room. He shut the door, and with his beautiful smile, he proceeded to tell me that the first miracle was my husband had survived surgery, that his friends hadn't moved him and when he was first injured, so that helped him make it to surgery. He survived. Now the next goal would be to get him off the ventilator, but the odds were he wouldn't be off a ventilator. He'd need it for his life, and that he would probably never walk again. And needed me to know that he wouldn't be able to use his arms or his legs, and we were just going to have to do what we could do to support Keith. He was wonderful, but I asked him why he was smiling and giving such bad news, and he just said, I always smile. This is my look. And it is. We've seen him a few times since then, and that is just the look Dr. Colin gives you. It's really reassuring. Right then, my family and I decided that we were not going to put any limits on Keith. We were not going to give him a ceiling, and so we were not going to tell him that the odds were he would never walk or use his arms or breathe on his own. We were going to do just the opposite and make him think that he was going to be able to get back to exactly where he was before. And Dr. Colin was all in favor of that as long as we understood that there was a strong possibility that Keith would not be able to do those things again. Well, everyone at Northern McLaren was absolutely wonderful, and it did take Keith a couple days to get off the vent, but he was able to get off the ventilator. And there's some different things we had to do to help him at Northern McLaren that helped set him up for the next rehab hospital he was going to go to. And in another segment, I'll share some of those great ideas that we had.